my new vlogging setup for the next 5 seconds, the DJI Osmo Action camera, and I gotta say, it's looking better than I thought it would. Let's give it a color grade. Okay, I didn't de-warp it in camera, so let's go ahead and fix that fisheye look. Wow, all right, 235:1 aspect ratio. We are now David Fincher territory. And can we get a shallow depth of field? Boom. Wow, that does not look like any action camera footage I've ever seen. Try not to move my head right now because I'll mess up this mask blur.
Deal a death blow to the ally.
Yo, Josh, this is such an impractical workflow, taking Osmo or GoPro footage, cramming as much Hollywood tricks as we can into the footage to make it look better than God intended it. It's so impractical. I cannot wait to show you how to do it. If you saw my last video, Immersive Cinematography with the Osmo Action, you'll notice two things. One, my baseboards need cleaning like nobody's business. And two, we created a more expensive look with the Osmo Action camera by giving it not just a shallow depth of field, but also using keyframes to give it a rack focus. Rack focus with an action camera. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't seen that video, right there, the ending is pretty dope. All right, so we're doing all this Hollywood magic in DaVinci Resolve 15. If you haven't downloaded at least the free version and tried it out, go ahead and kick yourself in the crotch and then hit that link down below. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so we got our first shot over here. We want to give it a very sharp focus in the center and then let everything else blur out of the way. And what's cool is Resolve has power windows. So we can go over down here, select a power window. Let's select a circle and let's just stretch it out to be about the size of this frying pan. Once that's about right, we'll hit Shift H to see what that selection is. So this is our window. And now we can invert the window by hitting this little invert button. Now it means it's gonna affect everything on the outside. Let's hit Shift H to disable that view. And now we're just gonna add a little bit of blur. So the first thing we'll do is go down to our color wheel here, tab 2, mid-tone detail. Let's crank that -100. And if we hit this little number here, we can turn it on and off and we can see just what it's doing. And already it's starting to work. It's taking away all that detail right there. But we could do it a little bit more. So next, let's go to Sharpen and Blur. We can drag this up to about, let's try 60. There we go. That's starting to look good. And boom, there we go. Let's play back. That looks really good. Now, this is one of those tools that if you do it too much, it just doesn't look real. So this happens to be a very well composed shot, so we can get away with it. We could probably actually crank this up to 70 if we wanted to. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, not bad. All right, so for this shot right here, this is where I find the key. And so it'd be great to have this really, really sharp and everything else blurred away. And then as I find the key, I can pull the focus right into the hand. So I think what I'll do on this one, I can use a gradient. We're still in power windows here. Let's do a gradient tool. And whichever way the arrow is pointing, that's the gradient. And this would be like the wall. So if we hit Shift H to see what that selection is. So let's work with the edge of the kitchen, because it makes kind of a natural gradient. And we're gonna say all of this is gonna be out of focus. All right, so now let's go over to color tab, mid-tone detail. Let's crank that -100, and you can see it's already doing something. And let's go up to our blur. We'll crank this up to 60. All right, and we can toggle this on and off, and that's looking great. All right, so now to animate it, all we have to do is put up a couple of keyframes. So we can go down to our little keyframe menu here, see corrector 1, that corresponds with that number. We're just gonna turn off the color correction from that one. That should do it. So let's expand this window and let's highlight color correction. There we go. And maybe when he brings the key in, that's from here to there, it should be racking focus. So we'll add a dynamic keyframe from right here, and right about here is when it should be in sharp focus. So we'll just leave the playhead there, and then we can go back and we can turn this down to 50, and we'll go back to our mid-tone detail and take that to 0. Let's see what it does. Now I could play with it a little bit more, and you can add another node so that you can have that little area where the key was hiding probably go out of focus as my hands go into focus. That would be a real rack focus. It just takes a little bit of finesse. Now for that opening shot of my face, it's a little bit trickier because we're dealing with now a moving subject, but it definitely can be done. All right, so for our opening shot here, I did two blurs. I did a primary, which basically traced around my head and shoulders, and then I did a secondary, and that one just did my face. And when you blur it too much on an edge, it's kind of a dead giveaway. I'll show you an example here. Let's disable this one. Let's take the blur and push it all the way up. And you can see it just doesn't look real at all, and there's like a hard edge right here where things are out of focus and this is in focus. One way to hide that a little bit more is you create a secondary blur just of my face. So again, you know, for this one we basically use power windows, and I just used a little pen tool and drew all the way around, and I didn't go as heavy there because when we add this mask, remember, the blur is going to add on top of it. So it's going to add an additional blur on top of the blur that we had before. And it helps sell the effect more by giving the image more artificial depth. So the back of the room will be twice as blurry as my shirt and my ears. And now that hard line that we were seeing earlier is blended together. Now I did one other thing up here which is super helpful. I'm going to zoom way into my forehead. You can actually feather the line. So in Pen Tool, all I did here is increase the inside, and then once you do that, it allows you to then move the feather wherever you want to start it at. And I kind of worked with the natural contour of my hairline. As the camera pushes back here, things get a little bit more blurry, and it kind of helps it sell the image a little bit. And because we're dealing now with a moving subject, we just have to hit tracker on the mask. So let's highlight the first one, put the playhead at the very beginning, and hit the play button, and the computer tracks it for you. Done. So now the last little trick is to give it that David Fincher style look, the 2:35:1. As of right now, it's in 16:9 aspect ratio, which is, you know, standard for YouTube stuff, but we want it to look a little bit more cinematic. So let's go up to File, Project Settings. Let's change the resolution to 2:35:1. And the easy way to do that is you can just times 2160 by 2.35, and you'll come up with 5076. All right, so now we get these little bars right up here, and you can go down to this little window here. You want to put output sizing, and you can just zoom in, and boom, there you go. Now it doesn't fix the warping. You actually need a plugin to fix that. So let's take this back to normal here. So if you have the studio version, they got this really cool tool, lens distortion. We'll drag that right on there. And let's increase that gang correction, and let's stretch it all the way until we can't see those corners anymore. I like it, but that line looks a little bit too far, so maybe we'll split the difference. We'll bring that like that. That looks good, and then we'll go input sizing, change that to output sizing, and we'll take that and we'll zoom it in just a little bit. All right, now if you're like, wait a minute, you just scaled up into this 5K clip, dude, let me show you. Resolve has this very powerful function now. It's only available free in DaVinci Resolve 15. So once you're done with everything and you're ready to export this clip out, go to your Edit tab, and we'll find our clip. We'll right-click, hit Clip Attributes, and then you see this little thing, Super Scale. Let's do 2 times. And sharpness, medium, noise reduction, and quite a bit because this footage is pretty noisy. And we'll hit OK, and then we basically export it out. I'm gonna warn you, playback on this is brutal. Right now, I mean, I have a super fast computer, and this is how fast it is dropping many, many frames. It basically has scaled up this 4K clip to 8K, which is more than enough resolution for us to export that out at 5K. It's kind of ridiculous, but there you go. David Fincher would be proud. Yeah, that super scale is kind of fantastic. I might be doing another episode just on that because it's pretty awesome. And if you have DaVinci Resolve 15, it's free. But on 16, they make you have the studio version. I hope you guys found this helpful. This is Josh Show saying thank you very much. Stay creative. Now go make some art.